Welcome to Crafty Brewers, Tales Behind Craft Beer. Yes, another beer podcast. No, it's not just another beer podcast. We are here to increase your enjoyment of craft beer, so sit back, relax. On this episode, we are going to go from grain to glass with the head brewer and co-owner of Exit Strategy Brewing Company, Chris Valleau. We are also going to bust a beer myth, explode and expose some really bad customer behavior. I'm beer drinker extraordinaire Brian Noonan. With me, as always, is the high priestess of hops, the baroness of brews, the co-owner and chief everything officer of Exit Strategy Brewing Company. She also is a fan of blue eyeshadow, Katherine Valleau. Hi, what's with the fade? You're all doomed up.
I look like an absolute retired 80s pop star today. Hey, buddy.
It's like I'm working with Debbie Gibson. This is great.
No, it feels
like I'm in a mall in Secaucus in 83.
So aggressive. You're not wrong. We had a water balloon fight today with some beer influencers. It was great, but when I was getting dressed, I was like, this feels very high school. So let me bust out some very, very old blue eyeshadow and some real hot pink lips and looked at myself and was like, are you an aged clown? No, you are appropriate to what you need to be.
Did you do the side ponytail too?
I didn't. This rat's nest, no. I planned well in advance because I also had a visor on to protect the face.
Okay.
I also forgot that we were videoing this. So like every time water came at me, my head would go down and my visor would block all of what's happening on my face parts. No, rat's nest has been the rat's nest because it did. Somebody dumped a cooler of water on my head today.
That doesn't sound like a water balloon.
You know, it turned less water balloon fight, more like water thing. It's fine. Everything's great.
That's why we can't have nice things.
It's truly why we can't have nice things. There was only one Band-Aid handed out, and there's only one instance.
Is that all you had? Or is that all was needed?
Oh my God, I keep a kit of a variety of assortment colors, adhesive.
Ooh.
Oh, so many.
Wow.
So many minutes.
I might need a Paw Patrol Band-Aid before the show's over.
You know what? I think I have some smiley face.
That would work out well.
Yeah.
All right, since this is our first episode, one, I'm very excited to be working with you.
Thanks, same.
Two, tell people about you. Give us the nutshell of Katherine Valleau.
I am the co-owner of Exit Strategy Brewing Company. I was formerly an educator. I taught fifth grade, which is the best grade in the whole wide world, for 7 years. The last 8 of my career, I was the differentiation coordinator for our district. I taught Latin.
Whoa. I took 4 years of Latin in high school.
Yeah, nobody speaks it. Nobody knows it. Nobody learns it. It's real hard to teach it to a third grader, but did that for a while. It's really very challenging.
Why does a third grader need to know Latin? Is it going to be a doctor in middle school?
We had a Latin program in our district, and it was actually quite great. And the way that we structured it after we realized that a third grader was like, what? Was to look at a language pyramid. So if this is your root word and this is from Latin, where do all the other words come from? And do you see how they go back together?
Well, that is why Latin, I will say, did help me out in college and with just any sort of English.
100%.
But I don't know any Latin now.
Right. Nobody knows Latin now unless they're looking at a prescription.
Right.
Or
a lawyer.
One of my beers and you're like, oh, mythology, Latin, whatever.
Oh, I get that.
Yeah, so did that for a while. I am now...
How did you end up here?
I am a supportive and loving wife.
Perfect.
I ended up here because we opened Exit Strategy Brewing Company in 2015 after a very disgruntled attorney was like, I need a hobby. And yeah, we don't have children. We were never going to have children. So instead we birthed a brewery.
Nice.
Which really is like having a consummate 16-year-old all the time.
Right, who is nothing but a heartache and a stressful existence.
And one day you're like, you are so great. You made your bed and you cleaned your room. And the next day you're like, why are you smoking pot in the house?
All right, I got to ask, which is easier, fifth graders the last week of school or people who are here at last call who really don't want to leave?
Literally fifth graders the last week of school hopped up on pixie sticks. Easier than grown adult human beings.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So Exit Strategy has been open since 2015, correct? Yeah. Forest Park, Illinois. How'd you pick Forest Park, Illinois?
We live a couple blocks away. We truly, we live, eat, breathe, sleep Forest Park.
Okay.
We moved here 20 plus years ago, and we used to drive by our building. I used to drive by the building every day on my way to my school, which is also in, wait for it, Forest Park.
Wait a minute.
I know. We drive by, and I gender the building because it's kind of like I don't know, like ships are gendered. She was in really rough shape. And then when we decided to move forward with the project, I was like, listen, there is this really ugly building that probably needs a lot of love that I think would be good for the thing that we want. And we came into the space, and I, like an excited puppy, screamed, "We'll take it," where, like, truly was like, "We'll take it." And my more pragmatic partner was like, "We will not do that. We will look at it, and we will talk about it, and we will, like, systematically go through things." And I was dancing around, like,
figuring out how much it would cost.
This is where the bathroom goes. Look at all this cool stuff. And that's so we did land on the space. And that's
despite his best efforts.
No, I mean, at one point
it's a great space.
He did. I do remember him saying, "He goes, do you see it?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, I saw it the minute we walked in, and it smelled like death, and the skylight was falling from the ceiling, and there's asbestos everywhere." I was like, "Oh, the minute we walked in here, I saw it. We just needed it. She just needed some love."
It's amazing how you can do that and walk into a space and go, "Yeah, I can see past all the garbage and go, yeah, this will do it. This is where we'll brew. This is where everything's going to happen."
It was like no questions asked. I know exactly where everything is going from the minute we walked in here, and that was it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, for those wondering about me, and really, you should.
I am wondering about.
No, you should. Everybody should know about me by now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I've
rude
been,
of me to wonder about.
No, stop it. I've been. Kids. Public service announcement. Don't take what I say as what you should do. Take it as a cautionary tale. But I've been drinking beer since I was 13. Probably before, because beer was always an integral part of our family gatherings.
Interesting. Okay.
Mostly it was old style, graduation parties, communions, anything old style was always there.
And that's an easy one.
That was an easy one.
Right.
And so the day after my 8th grade graduation, 2 friends of mine and I stole 3 old styles from the refrigerator in my basement and rode our bikes out to the park, and we hammered that old style. And from then on, it has been just a love affair. And I'm like most people. I came up drinking beer before craft beer was a thing.
Right.
So it was Sam Adams was the first exotic craft beer. Like, ooh, this is really cool.
Yep.
And then the next one I remember, and we didn't even know the term craft beer. I was visiting in Los Angeles, and we had Winehart's Pale Ale. And Winehart's is from Oregon or Washington. I don't even know if they're still around anymore.
Right.
But that was a craft beer. And then I came back and did what everybody does. I was drinking the macro beers, light beers, and this and that. And,
of course.
And then all of a sudden, I forget where I started having good beer.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is more interesting than just shotgunning a 6-pack of Miller Lite in the grocery store parking lot. This is, listen, I'm not casting aspersions on that.
Classy.
I was very classy. I only used a clean can opener to open it up.
Well done.
And usually I was in a button-down shirt. So, but then it started to grow, and the industry was growing, and my exposure to it was growing. And our producer, Cody, was my producer on a radio station, and we started having brewers in. And I started trying more and more beers, and then I was like, oh, I could differentiate between styles.
Sure, yeah.
Not like beer snobby, because that makes me crazy.
No, there's a huge difference.
But to go, oh, I like this. I don't like this. Why don't you like it? I don't know, because it's not something I like.
Right.
I like this kind. And so now it's really all I drink. Everywhere we go, we go to breweries. I love it. And I've known you guys for a while, you and your husband, who I think we're going to be talking to in a little bit.
Yeah.
And other brewers, local brewers that I've had the privilege of meeting, and it's just a great business, and it's, I would rather drink a beer than pretty much anything else.
It's a cool industry, and I think the science of fermentation, the science of beer, and then just getting into being knowledgeable about what you drink. Mm-hmm. Not drinking to get drunk, drinking because you like the skill behind what you're consuming, which is going to be, I hope, something that we really delve into of like, I am not doing this because I want to get myself blitzed. I'm doing this because I really like that a human person has the skill set to do this cool thing.
And the thing that really attracts me to craft beer and the craft beer industry is everybody I've talked to came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Nobody was a craft brewer nobody was in 6th grade at career day going, you know what I want to do? I want to be a craft brewer. And they're like, what? Are you an alcoholic at this age? No.
Maybe.
But now everybody I've talked to has evolved. And so there's a story behind every beer you drink. And to your education point, the fact that you can go into a place with, I equate it to wine. I know nothing about wine, except if I taste one and I like it, it's good. But now if I go into a place that has a lot of different beers and they list what style, I could go, oh yeah, I don't like this style. Oh, I like this style generally.
Yeah.
So this is one I'm going to try.
Yep. I think it's important to know and to be, again, informed. And one of the things that we're going to strive to do is enhance our listeners' enjoyment of the beers that they are drinking through stories from these brewers, how they got to where they are, what they enjoy brewing, and what they're proud of at their shops. The other thing is, too, craft beer, with the way that it's exploded, especially in the Chicagoland industry, P.S., we are recording from the Chicagoland area, you can't spit without hitting a brewery. Right. Truly, you cannot. And it's interesting because not only we're super collegial in the industry, we're also kind of competitors, but we don't ever see each other that way.
For sure.
But at the same time, we've got a market that's really, really, really saturated with good beer.
That's the problem.
So, and that's right.
That's a good problem for the consumer to have.
It's a great problem.
Not a great problem for business owners to have.
It's an interesting, it's definitely a slice of the pie that would be worth exploring.
All right, well, let's explore one of these stories with our first guest. This is very exciting. Our first guest. This is an interview that we recorded back when the sun was still out. So I'm sure everybody is going to enjoy our interview with someone you know very well.
I do. I know him very well.
Who is it?
This is the other co-owner of Exit Strategy Brewing Company, the head brewer of Exit Strategy Brewing Company, and the person that I share a home and a life with, my husband, Chris Valleau. Welcome to the show. This is Chris Valleau. Chris is not only my husband, he is the co-owner of Exit with me. He is our head brewer. He also handles all boring paperwork, anything that is electronically communicated to folks, and everything that isn't fun. Welcome.
Wow. Hi, that was a great intro. The man who's not fun.
No. He's fun. His job that isn't brewing is the less fun part.
All right, do you want to start him off? Tee him up with an easy question to get things going.
So, tell me, Christopher.
Oh, God.
I think we should get started. We can either get started, here are your choices. We can get started with a little bit of your human person background, or we can get started with some beer stuff. But I do feel that your human person background leads into your beer stuff. So
that is the most convoluted way of saying, tell me about yourself that I've ever heard.
You could tell us about yourself, or we could just dive right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So, shouldn't you know this by now?
Oh, I know it. But I want you. There's other people that
hopefully people who are listening, so they may not know.
I know plenty.
All right, so let me help you out.
Yeah,
you're from Ohio.
I am.
You were in IT at the beginning of your professional career.
My first life.
Then you decided, this life is not for me, sitting in front of a computer screen. I need to go in front of a judge and argue cases.
I was so disillusioned with IT, I had to go to law school at night for 4 years.
Wow. So, all right. So then you become a lawyer.
I did.
And you're still a lawyer.
I am.
Unless this gets out and then you become disbarred. But
that's inevitable anyway, so
you're doing this, and those are two careers that most people would say pretty stable careers, right?
They are.
But somehow you decide, beer is a better. What? How does the beer journey start?
Why be stable when you can be interesting?
So, I think the easiest way to explain it is in like the late 2000, around 2009 through 2013, there were some like relatively formative events that happened in life that kind of put into perspective, like, what I want to do with the rest of my life, and what do we want to do with the rest of our lives together. So, and we had been kind of toying with the idea of doing something different. Like, we're really kind of slightly dissatisfied with just going a corporate life, or that entire the daily grind. And so we started in 2012 making beer at home, and that was something that quickly evolved into doing it on the regular basis. And I think we went through like maybe four, like we did two, homebrew kits, and then switched to all grain. And then by the fifth batch of beer we ever made, that was the first batch of Persephone, which is one of our flagship beers now, on the stovetop, and sent it out to a homebrew competition, and it won the fruit beer category it was in. And then it was, okay, so maybe this isn't like something we're terrible at, so we're going to start making beer and see where this goes. And just over the course of time, like, we brewed just a lot. Like, I still owe my lovely wife about 4 new burners for our stove at home, because they are not in great shape anymore.
Did you know that this was something you were good at? Like, after you said you did the first home kit, and a lot of people get those first home kits, and they do it, and they're like, oh, that was fun. What made you say, oh, this home kit, I was pretty good at these two, now I'm going to go on and out? Where do you get that inspiration?
I think it was just something that I wanted to pursue it. Like, I wanted to see, like, okay, this turned out okay. Like, what can we do next? And then we just slowly progressed through. This is like, we were really interested in craft beer. Like, we really had a lot of just love and affection for like finding new beer and finding new styles, and then just pushing ourselves to like kind of develop that as we went. So it was really just a matter of, okay, that's great, we did this, what can we do next? And then we just kind of started progressing that way, and just making beer, and it was making beer and then just sending it out, and we did a lot of shipping. I use my firm's UPS account a lot to ship beer all over the U.S.
Listen, that's what lawyers are for.
Oh, yeah.
You guys have overbilled people forever. Let them ship out some beer.
As one does.
Allegedly.
As one does.
Well, I was fine until they gave me the bill to pay for it. Like, we're not totally oblivious to where you're going, where you're sending all this stuff. So we ended up just sending beer out to homebrew competitions, and then after about 2 years was like, okay, well, are we going to do this? Or, and then it was a long progression, but that's kind of how it went.
Can you speak to the number of awards, homebrew-wise, that you accumulated for the different beers? There were 3 that were submitted pretty consistently that we still have as part of the core portfolio here. Can you speak to the number of awards that were, or like approximate the number of awards?
About 40. I think it's in the 40s over the course of like about 3 years.
And for which what are the 3 big ones?
Oh, well, the 3 big ones, Validated, the Milk Stout, Exit Strategy, the American Pale, and then it was kind of all over the place, because a lot of Knobloch just won awards, Apologize, Brewfest, Dugan's, Persephone. So it really was kind of, a lot of our core portfolio started as homebrew that really hasn't changed all that much in the recipe. But yeah, a lot of them that was kind of how we developed the beers themselves, was sending them out.
Do you remember where we were when we decided to open a brewery? Do you remember which brewery we were at?
Like when we got our brewer's notice?
No, like when we looked at other people running a brewery and said, this looks cool, we could do that.
I'm guessing Greenbush.
Great job.
Yeah, Greenbush.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, you say we a lot, and obviously you and Katherine are partners, equal partners, not only in life, but right here.
Yeah.
You handle the beer, she handles everything else. When was this you going to Katherine? Because Katherine, as we heard, was in education before she was doing this. Was this you going to her coming to you, or you two going, this is not working for us? How do you make the pitch? Hey, let's go into beer making. That sounds right.
I think it's a healthy blend of the two. Like, I think it was a lot of a lot of things in my life changed, like with family and whatnot. So, and it was kind of one of those things where I think Katherine kind of pushed me to like find a creative outlet for some things, and it ended up being in brewing. And then from there, it was just kind of a collaborative, like, hey, this is something which we're trying and having, a good time with and experiencing some success. Like, how do you feel about this idea? So, and I think that's a kind of a testament to the relationship we've had, and 23 plus years of marriage is like, hey, you want to open a brewery? Sure. Okay, cool.
and then here we are, the brewery.
As opposed to like, no, get back to work.
Oh, yeah, don't you have court today? Get downtown. All right, now hearing your story, I'm going to assume, as I think most people would, that the name Exit Strategy Brewing comes from you wanting to escape your past life to a new life. But I've been told that that's not exactly how the name came to be. Am I off base?
So it's yes and no. So the first batch of beer we ever made was an Australian IPA, which was like a brewer's best, like dump and boil kit. And when we were getting ready to bottle it, we had to come up with a name, and so we jokingly called it Exit Strategy. And then probably 2.5 to 3 years later, when it was, all right, well, we've now brewed 60 batches at home and have a business plan that we're halfway through composing, we need to come up with a name for the company. We're going to pull the trigger on this. That was the natural fit. There was one other name we were considering, and then that was
it was everywhere.
Really?
Yeah. We were like, no one has this name. It's so cool.
What was it?
Community Brewing. There's a million. We were like, Google it. There's 17,000.
Well, there's a pretty big shop in Dallas, I think, that has the name. So then it was just like, and it was a natural fit for the concept. So that's what we ended up going with.
Yep.
How did you decide which of the home brews would stay as part of the core portfolio?
So I think our approach to brewing always was, we brewed beers that we like to drink. And so when we opened, we only had 4 beers, and out of 16 lines. And a lot of those were beers we made at home because they were based on styles we like to drink. And so but a lot of it was kind of scaling up a lot of those homebrew recipes from what we had at home to make them on this scale, which was kind of a daunting task, go from 8 gallons to 150.
That's what I was going to ask. What is scaling up for people who don't run breweries? What's the jump?
So it was our homebrew batches were 5 gallons, and the smallest batch we do here is about 155 gallons. So it was a kind of a big leap at first.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So how much would you say the recipes have changed from the days in the kitchen to now?
So there's been, I think some of them have just been kind of almost like, I wouldn't call it quite a straight line scaling up, but pretty close. And then I think a lot of it's just been learning to brew on a bigger system and kind of tweaking things over time. And it's now it's just more a matter of, it's like any chef who works in the kitchen, you have the tools, you have the equipment, you kind of know the framework you're working in. And so now you design things and tweak them as need be as you go forward. So that's kind of where we're at, I think, on those things.
This is a nerd question. So you get the boil kits. It's all done for you. Then you start moving on. Do you go to class? Are you coming home from court and then just spending all night in the kitchen? How do you make that to go, okay, these guys put this bag together for me. Now I got to put together the bag and put it in.
So I think I read 2 books religiously, John Palmer's How to Brew, and I think it was Ray Daniels' Designing Great Beer.
That's exactly what they were.
And I read them a lot. And then I still exist in the world of, I still use Excel spreadsheets for everything.
Okay.
So, our homebrew from homebrew days to now is it's just a migration of scale for that. And it's a lot of, I think being a brewer now has got to be so much easier than it was 23 years ago because there's so much good information out there. And you can just Google search hey, I'm thinking of using this ingredient. Like, what's the, how much of this should I use? And like, when should I add this ingredient? And like a lot of the, like reading the stylistic guidelines of, oh, this beer primarily consists of these types of grain, or like, this is the hop profile this beer should have. So I think we're like, in this day and age, you're getting a little bit easier because there's so much good information out there, which makes it like a lot easier to do our job.
Yeah. You were talking before about scaling up and how much, the batches that you make now of the core stuff. You also do smaller runs. One jumps to mind, and I've been asking if it's coming back for the last few years. It was the summer before the pandemic, and it was something with watermelon, and it was phenomenal.
Disgruntled Pelican.
And so I loved it. But when you're doing that, how do you decide? Okay, this is a beer that we're going to do a small batch of just to try, or oh yeah, this is going to be a hit. We're going to go full bore on this one.
So years, even before we started making beer at home, and this has just been something that stuck with me, is we did the brewery tour at a Half Acre.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure did.
One of the things they said was, we don't really do test batches. We just make something, and it either works or it doesn't. And, on our size system, it's like, well, a test batch for us is like nothing to some other breweries. But like, if we're going to, burn a turn on the system, we might as well burn a turn on the system.
Yeah.
And it's, so some beers I think have, like, if you brewed enough, you can kind of fit things within to a certain range. And if you're not exactly happy with them, you can kind of, maybe in the next go around, you dial them in a little bit more. But yeah, I think that's the approach I've always taken, is like, well, to hell with it. Let's just make this, and like, we'll see how it turns out. And for the most part, it's like, there's some beers that come out and you're like, yeah, we can do maybe a little bit better job the next time. But even like Disgruntled Pelican, I'm like, if and when we make that again, there are surely things I would like dial it in a little bit more. But for taking a shot in the dark,
people liked it.
Yeah.
So it must come down to like being a musician or something else. People liked it, but you as the creator is like, I can tweak it here and here, and the bass isn't quite right. So you're always trying to move things along.
Yeah, that was the first time we'd ever done a Goza, and I think I can say like, well, I think I would dial back like the salt a little bit on that one and but like I think the watermelon and cucumber levels were pretty spot on for that batch.
But I think one of the things that's interesting when it comes to your specific brewing, I use an analogy, and you can speak more to this, of like, Legos have like baseboards that you can do anything with, but once you get the base of your Lego structure, you can build anything on it. So when you, as a human person, learn something, that's your base Lego board, and then you build from there. So, like, I referenced this with sours and the sour program that we have here, and it was like, okay, I'm going to try one, nailed it. Now I'm going to take that base Lego board and I'm going to build a different structure on it, but the base is the same, right? Do you kind of think with brewing and the way that you approach the portfolio and lab beers and creative beers, that's kind of how, like, you go about recipe design?
Yeah, I think if you want to have not necessarily a signature, but like stylistically, we know how we like things to turn out. So for things like sours, like we do all kettle sours here, it's like, like what does our general grain bill look like for that? And we really don't alter that too much in between, because like we're pretty satisfied with what that looks like. And then you've got your fruit additions, but it's also, okay, like this is the acidity level we're looking for in the pH, and this is, these are the amount of adjuncts we want to add. So I think it's kind of like one of those things where you get a framework you're working in, and then you can kind of tweak it to based upon the beer you're making that with that specific beer, and then it works relatively well. I think there are things that you can always like, oh, we're always learning. Okay. I think every batch we learned something on. It's we've been brewing on this system for 8 years now, and I'm still kind of like figuring out little things here and there, but I think we're getting like we've got it dialed in, but it's all you can always learn. So
Katherine mentioned your brewing style. If you had to boil that down, what would you say your brewing style is?
I think we brew a wide range of styles. We do primarily ales, and that's kind of a generic answer, but I think we try to make beer that is very well balanced and not overkill on anything, not too subtle, very clean, very drinkable. I think we've gravitated towards a lower ABV by just kind of, I kind of feel like that's a trend that like direction things should be going in anyway. I know like I personally don't enjoy like super high ABV stuff anymore. And I think just trying to make as good of a product as you can within a wide range of styles. Like we don't really have like, we're not like an IPA focused or sour, like we're kind of all over the board. And I like that. I think we do that.
I think it's one of our proudest. There's like two things when I talk to people that I'm always super proud of with your beer. Oh, there's like two things when we're talking about the portfolio that I'm super, super proud of. And it's one of my, like a bragging point is that it's a full-on rainbow from light to dark and everything in between, which is great. And then what is the other thing that I am most proud of when it comes to your specific skill set with brewing? Do you know what that is?
Has she ever told you that she's
Yeah,
proud of you?
I tell all the time. All the time.
does.
All the time.
She
Like,
often.
no, but this is like the one where, you know, folks will be sitting here and they'll be like, oh my God, like I can do, if I give it too much away, he won't answer it. There is a thing that I am super proud of, and I talk to everybody about it who will listen when I'm on the other side of the bar.
Is it how much you can bench press?
That is correct.
It used to be pretty decent, but that's so long ago.
Give him a hint.
The hint is, there's no way to hint it. There's just no way to hint it. The thing that I'm most proud of your brewing, specifically your brewing, because I have a hard time finding this, generally speaking, is that you can bounce around the portfolio from style to style to style, and every beer finishes so cleanly that your palate isn't wrecked for the next style. I can have a blonde, then I could have the porter, then I could have an IPA, then I could have a sour, and nothing is sitting on my tongue as a consumer that's going to make me be like, why does this taste weird? How do you get that?
That's just, I think, good.
What magic are you weaving?
I think that's just good brewing practices, like just like procedurally, like proper mash temperatures, proper sparge temperatures. Good.
You want to tell people what sparge means?
Doesn't everyone know what sparge means?
No.
Oh,
I do not.
you do not. Oh,
I do
so
not.
The idea is like, so I mean, the quick and dirty, like, but after you mash your grains, which is basically creating a tea out of crushed barley and whatever grain you're using, is like basically giving the grain a shower to get the rest of the sugar out of it before you move it to the boil kettle. And that's a relatively temperature specific thing, because if you get it too hot, you end up with astringency, which is kind of like, I always equate it to like if you ever like suck on a sunflower seed kernel, you kind of get that like acidic.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the thing.
So if you ever like, I think if you ever have a beer that's like, why am I tasting that? It might be something that had like too high of a sparge temperature. So I think we just.
So I should stand up if I ever have that and yell at the brewer.
Right. You
Where's
should
my
scream.
sparge on?
Right.
My sparge is
This
not right.
sparge is too high.
Your sparge is too hot.
I didn't come here for hot sparge.
Hot Sparge is my new cover band name.
I can't wait to hear them. They're going to be fantastic.
They're going to be great. Also, that's going to be a new segment, is cover band name of the day. Hot Sparge is this episode.
Hot sparge in the Vorloff.
Is there a style that's come out that you brewed and you handled it fine, but you went, oh, God, I hope I never have to brew this style of beer again?
Because, get it.
So I used to, I have particular hills I'll die on.
Okay.
And those hills tend to migrate.
Okay.
Because I'll eventually seed that land. So I used to be like, I'm not doing a hazy. Now, like, I really like hazies, but it's been a style that I feel like I've chased for a couple of years to try and figure out like how to make a good one.
Okay.
And that's so like getting back, like kind of circling back to the experimental.
Yeah.
Like there have definitely been some like our first foray into that. It's kind of like, okay, yes,
we did it.
but I think that's something like we've again like anything else to kind of dial in over time. God, a style I've made I've never want to do again.
Oh,
Do you have an answer for that? Because we don't do a lot of lagers. I don't.
Okay.
It's not that I dislike lagers, but just with our like limited fermentation capacity, it's something where you don't necessarily want to lock up a lot of time in a tank because they just take longer to make.
Okay, so styles you don't want to do again? I'm thinking because like
I know I will die on the hill if I'm never making a milkshake IPA.
never.
Oh.
No, absolutely not.
and that's because you just have lactose intolerance.
No, I'm a sugar junkie.
Okay.
If it was
lactose.
if it was socially acceptable for my entire diet to consist of Mike and Ike's, it would. But it's
Have you made a Mike and Ike sour yet?
not yet.
It's on the docket.
I was gonna say,
But-
that sounds like something right up your alley.
But I do enjoy the fruited sours. But no, I think that's just kind of that's just like a thing that's like a bridge too far.
yeah.
So
Yeah, milkshake. That one you've said you'll never do. We will never do an IPL. We will
It's an
generally.
IPO.
It's an Indian Pale Lager.
That's what I was gonna guess, but I was.
I'm glad it's
I don't know the
auditory because my
difference.
eyes just hit the back of my skull.
but even some of those styles, I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. All right,
like-
good. If you don't know what it means, then the layman shouldn't know what it
Well,
means either.
it's kind of like that. Oh, cold IPA. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, what does that mean?
It's still cold.
Are
Still
you-
cold.
Is the industry, there's challenges obviously, but do you see it going to maybe not as many? You got to have so many styles, so you're constantly working on a million different things. Are you seeing the industry start to go, okay, we're gonna bore down on like 3, 4 really that we're really really good at?
That's interesting.
Or do you have to have all these styles because when somebody walks into Exit Strategy Brewing for the first time and they want a milkshake IPA and you come out and flip them off and go, I'm never serving that beer, no beer for you, and you go in the back, then you're stuck.
Yeah, technically, it's her job to flip.
Oh, all right,
But-
Catherine, when you flip
But I think that's a really good question because I think our industry is trying to find itself at this point because there are a lot of beer styles out there. There is a lot of consumers wanting, hey, what's new and exciting and like what's different and blah blah blah. And it's when you're always chasing something different and new, you're not really making what is known and solid. And it's I think everybody's kind of waiting for their heads to explode in our industry about like how do we keep up with trends? How do we make consumers happy? What's the next thing we're chasing? Because it's certainly, I mean, when I started making beer, I didn't know what the hell a hazy IPA was. Never heard of it. I don't even know if it existed at that point.
It didn't.
But it's something that it's challenging to kind of chase trends at the same time to try and make beer that's really something that people want. And I think that's really one of the interesting things in the last couple of years is you've seen this swing back to lagers, right?
Yeah.
With like, oh, we want like basic, clean, crisp lagers. And like, is that a reaction to enough with the hazies, enough with the heavily fruited sours?
and everything got so bitter, so many hops. Everything had to hops.
Like super.
So big.
Yeah.
I mean, like all the hops, all the barrel aging, all of the things happened all of the time. And then everyone was like, you know what I want? I want a beer flavored beer.
And and I think that's a lot of people in our industry are kind of trying to figure out like, okay, well, what are we doing here? And that's a challenge for sure. But yeah, I think for us, like when we opened, it was eventually we got to a core of 12 beers, and then 4 experimental, lines where we kind of messed around, and now it's it's migrated probably to like maybe like a 6 and like about 8 and 8 or whatever we have going on, and that's. I think for me, that's nice because it gives me a little bit more creativity to kind of play with, not making the same beer over and over again. Like we have some core beers that, like especially the ones we're packaging for distribution, like those are the beers we're going to be making on the regular. But then it's a lot of fun for me to experiment, to like, oh, this is a one-off we've never done, or hey, let's make this hazy pale with these blend of hops, which we haven't used. So it varies just a lot, but I think it's at the same time you don't want to be just doing nothing but chasing trends, but I think you have to be responsive to both what those trends are while sticking to like what your core is.
Before we let you go home to the puppy, you mentioned the business and the industry going through a lot of changes and challenges. A couple of years ago, unfortunately, everybody had to shut down. As a brewer, and as not only the head brewer of Exit Strategy Brewing, but as the owner, how have you pivoted since? And I know this is probably a long question. You're still here, so that's good. How has it affected like just how you brew beer in the last couple of years? Not you don't have to get into all the business details, but as a brewer, how has that changed your approach?
I think it's kind of it's an interesting question because you've got not only the change in the world, but I think maybe contemporaneously you had changes in consumer like preferences. So at the same time, people were finding different styles of beer and maybe going back to like more traditional things. I think it's certainly made, I think maybe somewhat more cost considering, like in terms of like what are we putting into the beer. There's been definitely some of that. We also had the change in Illinois to allowing us to start distributing at the beginning of 2022. So that was a big thing, kind of post-pandemic, but I think it's just been a constant like pivoting. But I don't think we've ever really deviated too much from our core in terms of like these are the beers we make. I don't think there was anything in particular we started chasing post-COVID. I think we've had like a natural migration to other styles overall, but I don't know that they would necessarily be like correlated to specifically like a reaction to the shutdown. Or
would you say though that during the height of the pandemic, when we in the collective, like every customer facing any kind of food and bev industry, when you could be open, did you find that it was super important for us to always have certain styles of beer because we had a very limited pocket of like, we got to hit it this weekend because then we're going to have to shut it back down?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of also one of the considerations of like, how much are we going to brew? Like, what are we going to brew? Yeah, because I think, like, I still remember the day we shut down because you were on the radio with Brian when that happened.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes, you were.
It was.
It got announced during the news, and I had Cody ask you, Cody, our producer, if you still wanted to come on.
That's right.
And you sacked up, and you came on just a couple minutes after realizing your entire world could have blown up.
It was right after locking the doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean, so I think, and that was, like, the weirdest thing for us is, like, okay, well, we're going to brew because we were already planning on brewing the next day, and we did. But then after that, it was like, well, I'm not going to bother putting anything in the tanks for a while. I mean, so we got to the point where I think we had, like, nothing going on back there, and it was just, like, going through stock. Because we had no idea. Like, they said 2 weeks. We're like, there's no way.
Did it help that they at least changed it so you could sell to go?
Yeah.
I remember coming in and getting dollars and stuff.
For sure. Yeah, that once we knew we were an essential business and...
Of course.
Which...
How else are you going to get through staying in your house with everyone in your family?
You got to drink.
Yeah.
Constantly. All right, can I ask you...
Be responsible.
Maybe add one more hill, and I could be way off base. You're a beer guy.
I am.
Are you ever going to take the hard seltzer path that everybody seems to be trying to do, or are you going to stay loyal to beer?
Hit it.
Bunker Hill.
Fantastic. Do you want to extra the fantastic head brewer and co-owner of Exit Strategy Brewing?
No. No, I mean, Christopher will never brag about himself nearly as much as I will, and I think he makes fantastic beer, and I think the approach to brewing that he has is exceptional. I mean, dude makes good beer. There it is. There's your extra.
Exit Strategy Brewing is at 7700 West Madison in Forest Park. What's the website, Katherine?
www.exitstrategybrewing.com. We can also be found not all over social media because I don't get down with the snappy chats or the TikToks. But we can be found on Instagram and Facebook because I'm old.
That's why I didn't ask you about the social media stuff, Chris. You handle the back of the house, bringing out the product, and Katherine will handle all that. Thanks for being our first guest. This is very exciting.
It was a pleasure to be here.
Buddy.
Yeah, you did very well.
You did great. You did great.
See, I'm social.
All right, it is time on this episode of Crafty Brewers to bust a beer myth. Katherine, what is a beer myth that bothers you?
Oh, there are so many, but we are going to start with that beer has to be served ice cold.
That's true. That's 100% true.
Not.
Oh.
And here's why. Well, first of all, we've been conditioned to think that beer has to be served ice cold because every beer ad that we see on television is like frosty mugs and such. So refreshing, it's ice cold. Here's the thing. When beer is served ice cold at around, 37, 38 degrees, you aren't tasting anything but cold. No.
That's true. I agree.
True.
I agree with you on that.
All you're doing is getting a cold sensation on your tongue. You're not actually getting any of the flavor, any of the aroma, or, like we've talked about, any of the skill that actually goes into building those things that these brewers are striving for. So, like, when you are serving an IPA super, 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 super cold, you aren't getting what that brewer is striving for when it comes to hop aroma and hop flavor, because those additions happen at different times of the brewing process.
So either what's a good temperature, like what do you guys serve your beer? And if I'm at home and I've got these great beers in my fridge, how long should they sit out?
So here's the thing. I go style dependent on that. We do serve some of our beers, like our blonde ale gets served a little bit colder because, again, like the profile on that is malty and clean and it's okay. We crank everything to like 42 or 43 on some of our other styles. I believe that a lot of the darker styles, especially porters, stouts, brown ales, any of that needs to open up and they need to bloom almost like red wine. Do I think they need to be served at like 60 some odd degrees? Absolutely not. However, I do think that when you are tasting a beer and you really want to get a full profile flavor of it, you need to let it, again, bloom. You need to let it breathe. You need to let it open up. Let it sit on the counter. Pour your beer or get your beer from the bar, whatever. Let it sit for a solid 10 minutes. Talk to the person across from you. Put your phone down for 35 seconds and let that beer breathe. If you do that, you're going to get more aroma. You're going to be able to stick your nose smack into that glass and smell hop characteristics. You're going to smell malt characteristics. Get in there.
But it's so warm.
Oh, I mean, we're just so conditioned to thinking that everything has to be either extra super hot or extra super cold. There is a happy medium, and it's just let your beer hang out for 10 minutes. It's not going to boil in 10 minutes.
Depends where you're drinking it.
I mean, agreed. And I'm not I'm not saying everything needs to be on cask. Right. But there are a lot of styles, especially when we do larger stouts here. I always say, listen, if you want this at all during your visit, I'm going to pour it right now.
Okay.
And I'm going to give it to you when you're ready, and you'll thank me because it's going to have opened. And you're going to get everything that isn't just, this is cold.
Very nice.
Yeah,
all right. Another regular segment that we are going to have that you lobbied for, and I can't wait to hear these stories. It's This Week in Bad Customer Behavior. Not bad customer service, which I mistakenly said earlier when we were doing something.
True.
But no, bad customer experiences and behavior.
Bad behavior. Yeah, this week in bad behavior. This week in bad behavior.
What do you got?
Which I feel like at some point needs a song or like a Star Wipe intro from like the 1980s. All right. So this week in bad behavior is a story about the time where, well, first of all, everybody's gotten a credit card receipt, and sometimes pens don't work because pens and surfaces, and sometimes they don't work. You
don't control that? You can't control
that?
Not
yet. God, I'm working on it. Much like I can't control the rotation of the sun and what is sunny and what's not. Again, working on it.
All right.
So we had someone come in from out of town. And I am not the only place this happens at. This is not unique to just us. This is just bad behavior in general. Someone come in from out of town, left a tip, thank you very much, on the receipt. That was misread. And it was misread by, wait for it, 24 total cents. Not $24, not $2.40, 24 cents. There was just a transcription error, and it was 24
Why are you trying
cents.
to rip somebody off for almost a quarter?
Because I suck. 24 cents. And, a couple days, it gets better. So 24 cents. And, it was on like a Saturday. Sunday went by. We're closed Monday. We're closed Tuesday. There's 3 voicemails.
You're spending 24 cents like there's no tomorrow.
I mean, I'm out there just dishing pennies out. And so, we get to messages, we get to email, we do the things, whatever. And there's someone who's very, very upset in a state that is north of us who really would like rectifying of this situation. Like, they want this situation made better. They want to be made whole. They want their 24 cents.
Yeah, hey there. Why you don't give me my 24 cents?
Yeah, you want to know why?
Yeah, why? Why did not?
Yeah. So, get on the phone. I'm so very sorry. Would you like me to send you a check? What would
What are you, SAG?
How would you like me to make you whole from this experience? And the answer was, no, I want cash. Now,
you didn't pay me cash. You paid out a credit card.
Correct, but this human wanted their cash
to
back.
make sure that the check didn't bounce. She knows yeah, they know your game. They know your game.
I could have taken whatever. Yeah. So to make, you can clearly make 24 cents a number of ways, but at the end of the day, you're going to make 24 cents with like.
It's got to be at least 4 pennies, right?
Well, there's always 4 pennies involved.
Okay.
And then there's either like, 4 nickels and 4 pennies, 2 dimes and 4 pennies, or I'm going to send a quarter and say, send me a penny back?
Nah, for trouble. Little interest. Some VIG. You owe them some VIG on the loan.
You know what? Here's your complimentary penny. I'm going to send you a quarter?
Yeah.
That feels weird. So, nope, they wanted their 24 cents back. So, in a note card, taped down in the note card, my hand to God, 2 dimes, 4 pennies, Scotch tape, close the card, put the card in the envelope, Post-it note, we're so sorry for 24 cents. And I understand that like money is money and people get real weird.
No, I'm sorry. I have to disagree with you. Yes, money is money. 24 cents is
literally not money.
I threw 24 cents at Cody before the show, and I'm not picking it up.
Fun.
Yeah, just for fun. 24 pennies. I was just pelting him with pennies.
Flicking pennies at poor Cody. So yeah, send 24 cents to a state north from us to rectify the mistake that illegible handwriting created. This week in bad behavior.
All right, well.
For 24 cents.
24 cents. I can't believe it. That is the end of the first episode. How do you feel? Are you feeling good? Should we do a second episode?
I think maybe, yeah.
All right, we'll do a second episode.
That's great.
Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer is, we've been mentioning Cody, produced by the great Cody Goff. So we say thank you to Cody Goff. Thank you again to our guest today, Chris Valleau, who is the head brewer and the co-owner of Exit Strategy Brewing, where we tape this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to next week when we will be joined by the team from Skeleton Key Brewing. So that will be a lot of fun to talk to them and go from grain to glass with them. Katherine, finish it up. What else do people need to do?
You know what you need to do? You need to do all of the things. You need to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You need to follow us on Instagram. You need to like us on social media. And you need to tell everybody that you speak to, including your mom who doesn't like that you drink, to follow the pod.
Cheers. We'll talk to you next time.
Cheers.
Take care.